Okay, we are back. We think we have solved the technical difficulties. So we're here. Where we left off is that I left my friend Stephen, who does this for me as a favor and co-hosts the show occasionally when one of us can't make it. And I basically was like, Stephen, you host the show now by yourself. So that went on for a few minutes. I'm sure it went amazing. I have no idea. I didn't hear any of it, but we're now back and we're going to try and do it as a duet instead of a solo act. So what Stephen was talking about before we left was this controversy having to do with Trump trying to intimidate lawmakers who told current service members to obey the oath, like encourage them to do so, which is a completely legal thing to do. So let's start by watching that video again that Mark Kelly and the others put out.
I'm Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris Deluzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow.
I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence officer.
Former Air Force.
We want to speak directly to members of the military
And the intelligence community.
Who take risks each day
To keep Americans safe.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals.
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad.
But from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law.
Or our Constitution.
We know this is hard.
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
In the Army,
Our Navy.
The Air Force.
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
because now, more than ever,
The American people need you.
We need you to stand up for our laws.
Our Constitution.
And who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Okay, now, other than the fact that, it ends with a Navy slogan, it's, other than that, I think it's great. And look, the controversy so far around this, even prior to this insanity where Hegseth is saying he's going to call Mark Kelly back to active duty, which, by the way, he's not saying about anybody else in the video. But even prior to that, the controversy was about trying to misconstrue what they were saying. This is what the Trump administration's approach was to misconstrue what they were saying, to say that they were telling people in the chain of command not to follow lawful orders, which I think, look, for anybody listening to this, we all know that that is BS. Like, we don't really need to dissect that. Stephen, what I want to point out to people is why this was done in the first place, because this has been digested by all the talking heads and really by a lot of people in Democratic politics as just another political ad, another political video. And I really don't see it that way because, like, I know Mark Kelly a little bit, but even if I didn't, like, we're all very familiar with his persona at this point. He's not a guy who engages in just like political shenanigans. He didn't go to Congress to like be on MSNBC all the time. That's not why he's there, right? There are people who did.
For Congress originally because his wife was shot in the head, right? Like that's
exactly.
he wasn't like angling to do this. Like he
Right.
stepped up under a tragic circumstance, which matters for your motivations and your and so several of the they were very clear saying you can refuse illegal orders. That was flashed on the screen. That's what they were saying. The opposite of that is you can't refuse illegal orders, that you have to do things even if you're told to do them and they're illegal. That is an absurd argument. And it is really terrifying and disheartening that we are having a national debate about whether the military has to do illegal things, because the Republican position that they're articulating right now is the military has to do illegal things if they're told to do illegal things. That is the antithesis of the truth and completely against the Constitution. The other thing I want to say, you and our military service was different in that you were an officer and I was enlisted. And for those that maybe aren't as,
because most people watching it to them, it's a distinction without a difference, but yeah.
And it's a fairly big distinction, I think. I went to boot camp when I was 19. I went to Iraq when I was 20. And so I view a lot of this as through the lens of what would a 19 or 20-year-old enlisted person do. And I got to be honest, like, I'm really, really frustrated that we are putting 19 and 20 and 21-year-olds, even theoretically, in the position of having to grapple with this, because members of Congress, of the United States Senate, of the Secretary of State, they all don't have the courage and guts to stand up and defy Trump or to say things clearly. And so to me, it's like a failure of our political system, right? That we are even at a point where it's necessary to let a 20-year-old know, hey, if an order is illegal, you don't have to follow it back. You're not supposed to do it if it's illegal. Now, for people who say, well, how do you know? Like, if it's a gray area, that they're going to do it. The point here is that if you believe you're being told to do something illegal, truly illegal, you should say no. You should be willing to get court-martialed, and you should be willing to go and defend yourself and say this was illegal and win the arguments. That's what that process is supposed to look like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the reason I think this has been digested incorrectly by the media is because they are, like I said, they're viewing it as a political statement, but what they don't understand is that there's a very clear purpose behind this video, and you can see it in the way that people, particularly like on CNN, the talking heads and so forth, the ones, the Scott Jenningses of the world, I don't know what he said about it, but I assume it's something like, well, what is one order he's given that's illegal, et cetera? And that's not the point. The point is, if you believe that we are on track for the president of the United States to give an illegal order, then you have to do this ahead of time. And here's why. Because I actually think, and this is a good point you make about the difference between your perspective on it and mine, I think that this video was made with an audience in mind that is the same audience that Trump and Hegseth dragged to Quantico a few months ago.
I agree with you. You're right.
I think that's who they're talking to, because at the end of the day, when I could make the argument that illegal orders already have been given, but even that aside, when a really egregious illegal order, a shoot those protesters order, for instance, destroy that boat in the Caribbean that we actually don't know who's on it. When that order is given, at some point, there's going to have to be somebody who is the first one to refuse to follow an illegal order. And when that decision has to be made, it is important that the person in the position of having to make that decision knows that there are highly influential elected officials in government who will not leave you hanging. They may not have the power to stop your court-martial, but they will have the ability to influence it greatly, to make a lot of noise, and to fight for you. And it is important that people like Mark Kelly, who, to your point, didn't want to be a senator. He wanted to keep being an astronaut, but he's got integrity, goes out there and says, if you end up being the person, you probably a colonel or above, end up being the first person who has to do this, know that there are people who will have your back and you can do that. I think that was the purpose of the video.
I completely agree with you. I see it originally from a different perspective, but I think you're completely right. And I agree with that. And to your point, like, that's a massive thing to do, right? That is, you are, you basically are saying I've been put in a terrible position, that I might be prosecuted if I do this order, and I might be prosecuted if I don't do this order. I mean, it's a terrible position to be put in as a military officer or a member of the military. And it's something that you have to and I suspect almost everybody, colonel and above, has started the process of internally grappling that and coming to peace with that, and coming to peace with, I've committed my career to the United States military. Maybe I'm a colonel and I want to be a general. Maybe I'm a 1-star and I want to be a 2-star. I need to spend some time thinking about what my obligations to this country are, what the law actually is, what the process is. And am I prepared to do something to end all that, because it's the right thing to do? Because, refusing an order, at least temporarily, ends your career, right? Like, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
When there's a new administration, maybe you'd be reinstated, but like, you're making a big decision. And I tend to think that there may very well come a time, the January 6th of 2029, that this actually becomes a very real issue. And if you are an officer, a high-ranking officer in the United States military, you need to spend some time coming to peace with what your rights are, what your obligations are, what your moral code is. And so I think to your point, I agree. That's what they were trying to do, is say, you need to start thinking about this, and we will have your back when that day comes, if it comes.
And I think that's why Mark Kelly is a big part of this, because Mark Kelly was a captain in the United States Navy, which is equivalent to a colonel in the Marine Corps or the Army or the Air Force. There's a Navy joke to be made there about how it's actually equivalent to being a captain in those, but it's not. And Mark Kelly's service is extremely impressive. And so I'm not making a joke about that. But that said, I think what's important to understand about that is that you are absolutely right. They have given forethought. I think from the moment Trump was elected, they've given forethought to what sort of circumstance that would be. And furthermore, a difference between, say, me as a guy who got out as an Army captain, and somebody like Mark Kelly who got out as a Navy captain. So it's three very important ranks higher. They've actually, because one of the differences between the military and the civilian world, and a really important difference, is you don't just move up in rank because you're good at the job you do. Every time you move up in rank, you are retrained to do the next job. And when you do that in the officer corps, you get a whole new school you go to. It's 4 or 5 months. It's like getting, half a master's degree every few years. And as you move up in the ranks, the people that this is targeted at, the colonels, the generals, they've been to school about this stuff. They've been through philosophical discussions with other people of their same rank, moderated by people senior in rank to them. They've written papers about this kind of thing. Many of them have gotten masters or PhDs in military ethics, all of this sort of thing. So they are more than equipped to do this, to make these decisions. And that's why I think it's so important that you have members of the United States Senate and Congress saying to them, if you are put in that position, we know your responsibilities. You know your responsibilities. We will have your back if you live up to your responsibilities. Now, with all that said, let's replay the video that we played before we had technical difficulties of this complete weasel, Jesse Waters, so we can get a taste of the complete other side of this moral equation.
The Senate also treated Pete like crap. He's not going to take this from another senator. There's a chain of command. Pete now controls Kelly. Kelly's going to come in and he's going to get a little bit of a spanking. And Pete already looked at the war medals this guy had in his chest, and they're all cockeyed. They're in the wrong direction. The guy doesn't even know how to dress up.
Okay, I just wanted to play that again so that I could say, fuck that guy. Because first of all, if you think that the Secretary of Defense controls a U.S. Senator, you A, don't understand how our government works.
Right.
Yeah, and B, talking, his war medals are cockeyed. I went ahead and looked up, Jesse Waters after I saw this. And I just wanted to remind everybody that Jesse Waters came out of college. First of all, he's 3 years older than me, which makes him, I think, 5 or 6 years older than you, Stephen, which means his ass also could have joined when we joined, but he didn't. You know what he did? He went and he became a production assistant at Fox News, where he has worked since 9/11. So Jesse Waters is going to judge the service of literally anybody else when his ass has been talking about the crap that the rest of us have been doing for his entire adult life.
Also a little creepy that he's fantasizing about two grown men spanking each other. Just like the Secretary of Defense spanking U.S. Senator. That was weird. He doesn't control anything. And he also seems to be unaware of how mirrors work, which has been my favorite part of this whole medal thing. When they're like, your ribbons are backwards. Like, it was like, there's a photo in a mirror, man. Like, that's how mirrors work. I don't know what to tell you.
Because he was wearing the damn thing at the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's two options here, right? One is that they're just so desperate to create a controversy, right? Because, I mean, this has been Fox's playbook for years. This is the Republican Party playbook. This has certainly been Trump's playbook. I don't want to talk about the economy. I don't want to talk about Epstein. I don't want to talk about all the, the increasing healthcare costs. So let's manufacture a scandal, and they're just getting flimsier and flimsier and flimsier. That's option one. Option two is they actually are planning on doing some illegal orders, and they're we're having a cultural fight right now over whether the U.S. military has blind obedience no matter what to the president, or whether the U.S. military has to follow the Constitution. And we're having a really, really important debate as a country that many people aren't even aware is occurring right now. Those are really, and I don't know if there's a third option, right? Those are the two options, whether they're trying to manufacture something because they have nothing else, or they actually are trying to set things up for illegal orders, because that is a really weird hill to die on, right? That's a weird hill to fight on, to say, no. Even if an order is illegal, you have to do it. Like, that's a weird thing to try to place to try to draw a line in the sand.
Well, put me down for all of the above. So, all right, that's what I think. So let's go to this next section here. We got a bit of a potpourri of things. First, so the cases against Comey and so Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, and then I don't think Comey needs any introduction, unfortunately, have been dismissed. We're going to breeze through this one real quick, but it's an important news point. Let's look at Eli Honig at CNN explaining it.
Let's put it this way. DOJ has now lost both of its two highest profile cases with one fell swoop, and they lost it because of incompetence, because they didn't install Lindsay Halligan into office in the proper way. And by the way, and this goes to the clip we just saw of the Attorney General, they knew they screwed up. The Justice Department knew they screwed up. And here's how we know they know. Because after they installed Lindsay Halligan, they tried to issue a memo a couple weeks later saying, well, actually, we call her this thing called a special attorney to the Justice Department. And the judge today said, yeah, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to issue something 2 weeks later and say, this goes back to 2 weeks ago. So it's a screw up at the most fundamental level. And for now, these cases are dead.
Yeah, I mean, what even is this?
Okay, what I want to focus on here is that the reason it's a screw up that was born out of incompetence is because they couldn't get other people to bring these cases, right? I mean, they had to unlawfully appoint someone because the people who were lawfully appointed were like, there's not enough evidence to do this.
No, and this actually is a really, really important point, not to go back to where we were earlier about illegal orders.
No, it's a great callback. Good call.
But what we have seen in the civilian world, if you are a DOJ prosecutor, if you are told to prosecute someone without evidence, you can and you should, and as a lawyer, you're obligated to actually to not do that and to resign and to step away. One of the things about the military is that's not always an option that you have. Like you can't just resign. In some places you can, other places you know if you're under contract or something like that you can't. But we are seeing, I mean, to your point, like it's because original DOJ prosecutors refused to bring these cases because they were political and they don't have any actual merit. Which as a lawyer, for anybody, you're not allowed to file a case. It's against the ethics code to file a case that you know doesn't have merit. And so we're seeing that in other parts of the government already, which makes that other discussion even more salient right now.
It's a great point. It's their modus operandi. All right, now we're going to go into a discussion here about sort of what it's like in Congress right now and what the Republicans are worried about. But it starts with the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene has decided to leave Congress. So she's had a bit of a journey here lately. I'm not going to subject everybody to video of her, reading her statement about why she's leaving. I'm going to sum it up with basically she says a few things, but primarily she says, Trump's a jerk. He's been not nice to me. He's going to primary me. If I win, then, I'm going to be in the minority anyway, because we're going to lose the midterms. And then I'm going to be stuck trying to stop the impeachment of a guy who tried to destroy me. So F this, I'm out. Now, obviously, like it just does kind of drive home the point that Marjorie Taylor Greene it's sort of the Marjorie Taylor Greene show. And she's not like a person who sticks around and fights for what she believes. She's sort of, but it does get us into, well, Stephen, do you have any comment on that before I get into this other stuff?
My snarky take is she dated it for January 5th next year. I don't know this for a fact, but my strong suspicion is that gives her 5 years of service, invest her in her federal pension, right? So my strong suspicion is that she wants to make sure she gets her defined benefit pension, which I'm a supporter of defined benefit pensions. It's just Republicans have tried to take them away from everybody else. But my guess is she wants to have those couple extra days to make sure I think she's retiring just like 2 days after she vests in her pension. Got to make sure that the paperwork goes through. And so she'll make sure that taxpayers keep paying her once she hits retirement age for the rest of her life. So that's my original snarky take. But
it's a good point, though.
Well, it's just the hypocrisy of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, I don't begrudge people pensions. I work for labor unions. I defend pensions.
She's earned her pension, but so has everybody else.
Yeah, I'm just really tired of them trying to take pensions away from everybody else and then do stuff like that to make sure that they get their own. Like, say I'm going to resign, announce it, and then, to your point, like, stay and fight. Like, stay for the next year and fight, right? Like, and I've seen some Democratic members of Congress, I think I saw, make that point of saying, we go through this stuff all the time. We've been fighting this. We get death threats. We get harassed. We've been the ire of Trump's rage for years, and you see us fighting, and you were it for for 60 days or whatever, and you folded up shop and quit and ran away. So I think that's
she was fanning the flames and can reasonably be blamed for some of the invective that came their way in the first place.
Right.
And now she gets a taste of it and she's out. All right. So a few other GOP members, this is according to Jake Sherman of Punchbowl, said a few other GOP members messaged us over the weekend saying that they too are considering retiring in the middle of the term. Here's one particularly exercised senior House Republican. This is a quote from an anonymous senior House Republican. This entire White House team has treated all members like garbage, all. And Mike Johnson has let it happen because he wanted it to happen. That is the sentiment of nearly all appropriators, authorizers, hawks, doves, rank and file. The arrogance of this White House team is off-putting to members who are run roughshod and threatened. They don't even allow little wins like announcing small grants or even responding from agencies. Not even the high profile, the regular rank and file, random members are more upset than ever. Members know they are going into the minority after the midterms. And it says more explosive early resignations are coming. It's a tinderbox. Morale has never been lower. Mike Johnson will be stripped of his gavel and they will lose the majority before this term is out. So I wanted to tee this up to say they're basically going, we're in the majority and we can't get anybody to treat us with any respect at all, which in past administrations, I can promise you that Republican and Democratic, the way it usually works is if you're a member of Congress and you are calling over to an agency, that's fast tracked. You get your calls returned, whether you're in the minority or the majority, whether you're in their party or not. And now you've got majority members saying that the White House could give a crap what we're saying, which means they're totally like, if you're a Democratic member, you're getting nothing. There's no way that anybody's calling you back to help your constituents. And they're saying that the worst thing that could happen is they're in the minority. So I thought, most of the people listening to this have never been in the minority in a legislative body. And I thought we could talk about that a little, and particularly in your case, because you and I were together in the Missouri State House, which a member of the Missouri House has in the minority has about the same amount of power as a member of the minority does in the U.S. House. But then you're also a minority member now in the state Senate, and you have an appreciably larger degree of power and influence. So you want to just talk about the difference between those two?
Yeah, sure. So first off, it's kind of ironic and funny that this is like the whole members of the leopard eating face party surprised that the leopard is eating their face. It's like, yes, Trump is about Trump. He only cares about Trump. He doesn't care about you. He's never cared about you. One of the things in there is that they said they can't announce grants. So basically what they're saying is that if the federal government has a grant for your district, typically, particularly if you're in the same party, the president would let, a member of Congress maybe announce that and get some credit for it back home and be like, see, we got, $1 million for this infrastructure water project. And it sounds like Trump is saying, no, he wants credit for everything. So he's not letting them announce anything. And it's like, yeah, Trump's always been about himself. Like, well, I can't believe you're just figuring it out. I'm sorry that it now is coming on to you. And so they're saying morale has never been lower because these people run for the legislature. I think almost everybody that runs for the legislature, whether it's state legislature, whether it's for Congress, certainly your initial office that you run for, almost everybody does it for the right reasons, right? I think some people lose their way once they've been doing it for a while. And there's some people that are in it for, fame or whatever, but the vast majority of members of Congress. And
it's at least the 51% majority of their reason. They might be 49% thinking that it's going to be some glamorous thing. It's not, but 51% of it is like, I think I can make a difference.
Yeah, that's why people initially generally run for stuff. And so I think it can be really disheartening. And what they're finding out in the majority is they're being treated like minority members. It is tough. It is really tough. Mentally, it is tough. Emotionally, it's tough. Because you campaign and you say you're going to do all these things, and then people elect you, and you're like, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to do all these things. And when you're in the minority party, you get down there and you find out you're not going to get to do a lot of the things you campaigned on and that you told people you would fight for and that people elected you to do. And it's really jarring, and particularly in a House, the way the House works, whether it's the U.S. House or state legislatures, the House is very much a line them up, who's got the most votes rules everything, winner take all. If you have one more vote than the other party, often it's just completely ignore the other party. And that, to be clear, that happens in Democratic controlled houses and Republican controlled houses. And it's really frustrating. It's hard when people at home want you to try to do something and you're trying to do it, you're trying to fight for it, and you just get nowhere. I remember one of my first experiences in the Missouri House when we were together was I had a veterans bill. You and I had, we were just 2009. We've been back for, I've been back from Iraq for about 2 years, a little less than 2 years. You've been back from Afghanistan for maybe 3 years. And the Republican committee chair told me that I could get a hearing on the bill, but if they were going to try to pass it out, they were going to have to put it under somebody else's name.
Like a Republican.
Yeah, a Republican was going to have to carry the bill. I couldn't, my bill couldn't. It was like a little thing for veterans. I actually had to do with military voting. And it was jarring. I was 25 and I was like, wait, 2 years ago, I was literally, 18 months ago, I was literally risking my life for this country. And now I have a bill to say, and by the way, you would have called me a hero. You would have thanked me for my service. You would have done this stuff. Now I have a little bill on military voting, and you're telling me because of the partisan affiliation by my name, I can't be the one to do it. And it's a shock. And I think it breaks people. I've seen it, break people in the Missouri House. People deal with it in different ways. Some people disconnect and stop trying. Other people try to become collaborators with the majority. Other people leave office and go find something else to do, which is, it sounds like a lot of members of Congress are going to be doing. So it's a tough, partisanship aside, it's a tough place to be. They should not be surprised because this is how Trump has always conducted himself. And, the fact that Speaker Johnson had him out for a month and a half, they weren't even in session. These are people who want to pass bills. They want to do things. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they're not in session because I don't know if it was the Epstein file vote or why they weren't there, but that's disheartening.
Absolutely. And it's the other piece of it is if you always have been on the outside of politics looking in, you look at and when you do meet, say, a member of Congress, you meet them when they show up to shake some hands and everything, and they show up with great fanfare at your school or your office or some factory near your house that's opening, and it looks like pretty glamorous, but that's not what it's like. Those moments, which by the way get old pretty fast anyway, are few and far between. And then a lot of the time what you're doing, particularly if you are in the minority party and you really don't have much influence, you're sitting in hearings that are frankly pretty boring, but they're especially boring if you don't feel you have any ability to influence the result. I can remember, and it's a big part of why I ran for Secretary of State, because I would sit in these hearings and know that the stuff that was being said was total BS. And I would know that I had asked some questions that totally had exposed it to be BS. And that had absolutely no effect on the fact that the reason it was getting a hearing is because the chair, with the help of the speaker, had decided that this should be a law. And I was just a speed bump at best on the way to it becoming a law. And it's not a lot different in the U.S. House. So
and it's got to be, even think about a Republican House member now. So let me give you an example. In neither of us were in Congress, but watching when the ACA passed in 2010, that process, yes, Barack Obama was the president. Yes, he put forward a healthcare plan, but there was real negotiation within the Democratic caucus in both the House and the Senate about a whole bunch of different issues. Members of Congress had real input on what the final ACA looked like. It has got to be really weird to be a Republican member of Congress right now. Does anybody believe that they have any input at all on what? They're literally just waking up every morning waiting to hear what they're going to be defending that day, what the president's going to say, and what they're going to be told they have to believe. And does anybody think that the White House is consulting with them in any way about healthcare policy or any policy for that matter? So it's not. Yes, the president is always sort of the commander in chief, the chief executive, the head of the executive branch, but they always have some give and take with Congress, particularly even their own party. And Trump doesn't do any of that, and so it's not surprising to me that everything is fine when you're winning, right? If the economy was going well and people were loving it, they would go along with it. But the economy starts getting bad. Tariffs are causing inflation. They're causing unemployment. The administration keeps screwing up. Constituents are getting upset. They got local businessmen being like, what are you guys doing? Why are you doing this to me? And this anger is starting to grow. and it doesn't have an escape valve. And so a lot of people are going to quit and leave Congress, and it's going to, the Republican Party has 3 long years to go here.
Mm-hmm. It is an indicator that we are on a good trajectory for the midterms. And speaking of which, I have 2 more items to bring up. One of them is directly related to this. Jeremy, let's go ahead and play this clip of Harry Enten talking about his belief that the Democrats basically won the shutdown based on recent polling.
I think it's pretty clear, at least from a political angle, that Democrats won the shutdown. Why do I say that? Well, first, let's take a look at Donald Trump's net approval rating. It's way down from where it was pre-shutdown, right? Pre-shutdown, his net approval rating was at -10 points. Now it's at -15 points, the lowest his net approval rating has been during his entire second term in office. So the shutdown, it might have initially been helping Donald Trump out a little bit, or at least his ratings weren't falling, but now his ratings have sunk to a term too low.
What about Democrats? Is there a way to measure how they may have fared?
Yeah, okay. So, a lot of times we look at, okay, what's congressional Democrats' approval rating? I think that's the wrong way to look at it, because what Democrats want is they want to get back into power. And the way they're going to get back into power is by winning the 2026 midterm elections. Unless, of course, there's so many House Republicans who resign over the course of the next year, although that's not likely to happen. But take a look at the generic congressional ballot. Pre-shutdown, they were ahead by 3 points. Where are they now? They're ahead by 5 points. Their lead has widened. It is extended. When you look at those who are absolutely certain to vote, that is likely voters. We saw that in the Marquette University Law School poll last week. This 5-point lead went to 9 points. So the Democratic lead on the generic ballot has widened. Donald Trump's political position has worsened. I don't see how you can look at both of those angles and conclude anything other than Democrats, at least from a political point of view, won this shutdown.
Yeah, so the difference between this number and this number, this is Democrats feeling pretty good heading into the midterms. This is Democrats feeling great.
And that looks a whole heck of a lot like what happened in both New Jersey and Virginia and the special elections so far this year, which is Democrats really, really outperforming the baseline from 2024, which is, of course, what they'll need to win in 2026.
Okay, while we were watching that clip, the producers just sent me links to this breaking news that 2 members of the National Guard may have just been shot in D.C. On the street. Stephen, you're in D.C. right now to visit family, right?
Yeah, I'm in the northwest part by kind of near DuPont.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know any more about it here. It just says massive police and National Guard presence at Farragut West Metro Station, a block from the White House. That appears there's yellow tape up. And because the guard presence that Trump put in place is still in DC. They haven't ended it. So I don't know what is going on, but we'll put a pin in that and come back to it. It's DC Police Department said that the scene is secured. There's a suspect in custody. I'm not a real broadcaster, so the idea of like doing this stuff live gets me nervous. So I'm not going to continue. I don't know. I think let's finish the show and do this one other segment that I had. Rather than get in and try and analyze it.
Right now, they were going to go by the White House, so I'm going to text them and just tell them to be safe. That's you don't want obviously anybody to be shot for any reason, but you really hope that it's nothing political or intentional. I mean, you just hope that whoever was shot is okay, as okay as they can be, and that it's nothing. I mean, there's just no good. There's bad, and there's worse.
There's nothing good here.
There's nothing good.
But yes, yeah, but you're right. But so rather than analyze it at all, I'm just telling people that's what's happening. As soon as we're done, streaming here, I and you and everybody will go and try and learn more about it. The last thing I was going to talk about before we finish here is because I was going to get into that segment before, just about. Well, what I would say about the Harry Enten thing there is just that I think that that's right. I think it's important to keep in mind. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that the other thing that's going on during the shutdown is Trump is doing everything wrong in terms of Epstein. Well, I don't know if he's doing everything wrong, because I think he may have done everything wrong before. Now he's trying to cover it up. But I do think that Harry Enten is kind of glossing over the fact that that's probably also affecting his approval, combined with the fact that things are getting more expensive, and it's largely because of his own policies.
And really, there's a thread that can tie almost everything we've talked about today together, right? So I said that maybe they're just trying to manufacture this whole fight with Mark Kelly because they're trying to create a distraction. The members of Congress are upset. Like, things are going really poorly with the Trump presidency. They're going poorly because what I started out with on our first stream was talking about Ukraine and Russia and saying they're lazy, they're dumb, and they don't care. And if you're lazy, you're dumb, and you don't care, like, governing is hard work, and you can slide by doing, press events and being, shock and awe for a while. But at some point, the bill is going to become due. And that, whether it's tariffs, whether it's Doge going through and firing a lot of people and destroying government agencies, whether it's uncertainty, whether it's complete lack of healthcare plan, like, Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He's got a couple moves which all involve press and don't involve actual policy. And people at the end of the day want their lives to be better and certainly not worse. And if their healthcare costs are going up and their jobs are getting screwed up through Doge or through trade wars or something like that, then people are going to be unhappy. And if they're unhappy and he's treating members of his own party like crap, members of his own party are going to start to be unhappy too. And it's going to snowball. And that's, I think, that's the thread that is connected. Almost every single story that we've talked about today is Trump doesn't care. He doesn't have a governing philosophy. He's not trying to take the country in any particular direction. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't know what he's doing. And he's making life worse for people. And people are starting to get angry about it.
Perfectly said. And this, it kind of leads into this last thing I wanted to talk about, which is, I think, very interesting that under the radar of all this, you have Steve Bannon trying to lead the charge in the Republican Party to regulate AI, and in fact finds himself largely on the same side, I think, as the left, although I feel frustrated that it doesn't feel to me that on the left or the right that there are anywhere near enough elected officials who are eager to actually become experts in the world of AI and the direction it's going. And so what I see Bannon, who is somebody I feel I have virtually nothing in common with, and what I see him saying is that this is going to destroy the working class, and that the Trump administration, which he's arguing would, left to their own devices, probably be very skeptical of AI, but is instead, because the tech billionaire world decided to come over and sort of pay the patronage to Trump in the second time around. They didn't in the first time, which is why all the right wing was all up in arms about tech and during COVID, saying that these people were suppressing the truth and everything. Now they're all for them, and Trump is like, we got to get all these regulations out of their way and let them plow forward with as much AI progress as possible. And Bannon is saying this is a really terrible idea. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. I feel like everybody should stop and at least hear what Steve Bannon is saying about this.
Yeah, sorry, but you're saying that my family is actually they're near the shooting, and so they're out of the way and they're safe, but it's
just trying to navigate.
It's fairly chaotic, and they're trying to get back, and so certainly hope everything there is okay. Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and Trump has tried multiple times to put things in bills that would prohibit the states from doing any regulation of AI at all. And that's another thing where this country does need to have a debate about AI and the role of AI. And it's going to be something we feel out, and it's got a potential to do a lot of good, and it's got a potential to do a lot of harm and destroy both jobs and lives in different ways. And so coming to grips with that, like social media, there's certainly pluses of social media, and there's obviously cons of social media. And having a debate about that is really important. Trump is trying to short circuit that debate. They've tried multiple times. They tried the big, beautiful bill. They're trying still now to insert language that would prohibit any state from passing any AI regulations whatsoever. And that's really problematic. It's really bad policy. And there's some pretty just basic levels of AI regulation that, for example, and I said this on Twitter, but in Missouri, we're working on a bill that would ban using AI to create images of underage children performing sex acts.
Seems reasonable to me.
Seems like a pretty reasonable AI regulation. Trump would block that. The law that he's trying to pass would prohibit states from preventing pedophiles from using AI. Crazy, absolutely crazy. And that's why I say public policy is actually like hard work. You can't just say something into a microphone. You have to understand what you're doing, what you're talking about, what the repercussions, it's great to say, hey, we want one policy. It's like, well, so you don't want states to be able to prohibit? Well, I want that. Okay. So you don't actually want one policy. You want states to have some right. And so this is another example. And it's, I think probably if you go back to it, I'm sure there's a trail of, or not a trail of cryptocurrency and money from Silicon Valley that's going to Trump and Trump orgs and Trump affiliates. That is pushing for this, and it's there's probably people listening to this whose jobs very well may in some way depend on which side wins this fight and wins this argument.
Absolutely, and what is hopefully a good place in policy is a positive thing, to your point. And like, if we could go back in time and have different states have different laws about social media from 15 years ago to slow down the progression of it so that we could come to a more thoughtful place in our society for social media for kids in particular, I think that would have been a good thing. So it's just, I wanted to point it out because it's just yet another area where two things are happening. One, to your point, the Trump desire to cater to the rich and enrich themselves is keeping us from having best outcomes. And also, more proof that a more populist working class means that we should not assume that we should never anymore assume anybody's positions or beliefs on anything. And we should view all voters as gettable because of issues like that. So with all that said, rather than stick around and tempt the technical difficulties for longer, they have worked for the last 40 minutes if they didn't work before that. Stephen, thank you for doing this so frequently, but also thank you for stepping in and fully hosting the show when we had technical problems.
It's a lot easier to do commentary than play-by-play. I'm gonna go ahead and say that. So much respect to those of you that actually host the shows. It's a lot easier just to jump in and give your opinions after somebody else has teed you up. So I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for doing it. All right, everybody, please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.